Hi, gorgeous lights, and welcome to the Spirit Whispers wisdom for the day. The word of the day is resilience. Now, I had an interesting day yesterday, got to the end of the day and said to upstairs, gosh, how many people are just feeling really tired, incredibly tired of feeling like they're having to just put one foot in front of the other and persist and just keep going forward when they're feeling like they're actually really, really frustrated. And Elise, my guide, she said, well, at the end of the day, the choice is yours because this next day is still going to rise, and how you approach it is really a mindset. And I said, oh, well, that's just getting up and then just putting one foot in the other, isn't it? And she said, well, you have to have an inner resilience and an outer resilience. And I said, well, isn't that the same thing? And she said, no, it's completely different things. Because she said, think of it in terms of energy. Your body is an energy condensed into matter, and your mind has its own energy, your heart has its own energy. Everything is actually energy. And as a massive working cog, the body, the mind, the spirit, everything, then there has to be various degrees of resilience, she says, that brings you into a complete understanding. So I was kind of fascinated by what she was talking about as well. So I asked what outer resilience was. And she said outer resilience is getting up and physically doing an action that says, I'm going to make a coffee, I'm going to have breakfast, I'm going to put clothes on, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And she said, because you're actually putting an energetic body into action and showing the resilience of the body to keep going. And she said, and I said, well, isn't that a mindset though? And she said, no. She said, there is a mindlessness that can be created by just going through an action and going, there's a safety mechanism in doing that action. So there's a degree of resilience in turning up in that way. And she said, there's a resilience of your heart that just still keeps beating, even though that you feel that you're hurt or let down, you still have this resilience or this energy that's able to be tapped into. So remember that I'm talking to spirit, and their perception and their understanding of things is quite different from sometimes the way that we actually look at it. So I'm always fascinated to have these conversations because I never quite know where they're going to go or what's actually going to happen. And I said, well, what about mind resilience? And she said, well, there's two types of that as well. And I said, I don't understand that. Can you explain what that means? And she says, well, when you are thinking of everybody else, there is a level of resilience that you have to have. So I've got to get up and I've got to make this person breakfast, and I've got to get up and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. So there's a mind resilience that says when we're thinking of other people that we have a wider capacity to be more resilient because of a sense of duty or love or whatever that pushes us forward to go, this is a way that I have to turn up for somebody else. She said very, very few times do you actually think this is the way that I have to turn up for myself when you're talking about a resilience that gets you motivated to doing something for someone else. She said it's very, very important to understand when you actually work on what you are doing for yourself, which doesn't enter your mind very much, unless you've had a lot of time to actually self-reflect and sit in the understanding of where you are as a being in your own life. Then she said then you have a lesser resilience to being able to actually see yourself as an important being whose needs are just as necessary. She said, think of it this way. You can have an incredibly tiring day, and then someone rings you and they've got a bit of a crisis, and you think, oh, actually I'm really tired, but do you know what? I'm going to actually help them because I'm really worried about them and I care about them, etc. So she said you pull in an inner resilience that says that I can keep going to help that person. But she said the interesting thing that they find about human beings is when it applies to ourselves and the things that we need to do for ourselves, which should be the most important thing, which isn't actually societally encouraged, she says. It is about that we will literally go, it doesn't matter, or I'll do it tomorrow, or there isn't a resilience that we actually apply to continuing to give ourselves permission to say, you're the most important thing. And she's a very, very fine line, because at various times you can be told that you are selfish to have this self-directed focus, yet it is your life, and it takes resilience. She also told me to stop the programming that says that you're lesser importance and refocus, because we're in refocus energy, and refocus on what you need to do for yourself, how you need to do it for yourself, and putting yourself as a central priority. You're not incarnated onto the earth plane to do everything for everybody else. You're going to go into a world of frustration and not feel seen, heard, appreciated, loved if you are continually turning up for other people. As you said, what they're worried about at the moment is people are not finding their resilience, but instead are isolating themselves. And when you isolate yourself without doing the work that actually sees you as important in your own mind, which takes this resiliency past this programming, then you can actually end up hermiting yourself away. You can end up feeling like nobody cares about you. You can end up feeling lost, alone, all of those sorts of things that is actually pushing you forwards to an internal resilience, but we find it very, very hard to actually meet ourselves in the middle during that period of time. So she said that she wants you to have a think about where you give yourself permission in this resilience to dig forward to find the truth of yourself. Where do you give yourself permission to stop and pause and say, I'm actually really, really important. I'm actually really important in my own mind for myself, that I can learn to self-nurture, self-regulate, and give myself the resilience to be able to rise again, not for anybody else, but for myself, seeing myself as such an important being. And I kind of was fascinated by that, because I sat and thought about it and went, do you know, when do you actually do that? When do people actually do that? When do you sit down and think, you magnificent being, this is who you are, and you're allowed to do that? Now, I just got told off for going magnificent being, because she said in your entirety, it is not egotistical to think of yourself as this amazing, incredible being. It is not arrogant, it is not rude, it is worthy, she's telling me, of recognising that you're actually deserving of your own wonder at your own self as well. So I kind of like these discussions that we're actually having around some of these words, and I have noticed that they're starting to get more intense. Why? Because I'm taking the time to talk to them on a daily basis about some of the things that they've got to say. And I have noticed this. When you do not stop and pause and do internal investigations into the truth of how you truly feel, you lose your connection with yourself, and it becomes in your head and all about what everybody else is doing, thinking, saying, and there's no room for you in that. It is about everybody else's opinion. Please pause and adopt some resilience to actually taking the time to dig in and investigate. How do you truthfully feel about that? How many times are you listening to a conversation that somebody else is venting all their point of view and venting what's happening to them, and thinking, wow, that's really, really terrible, and then you haven't even realised that there wasn't any room for you in that conversation at all. You were just a passive listener because that person was taking up all the space in everything. And we can say to ourselves, that's really good listening, and yep, by all means it is, but it's really, really important to understand there is balance to every equation. And if you have friendships at the moment, and this is where you're going to get tested on your own resilience to realise that the universe is actually working for you to actually get you to see that if these relationships that don't serve you are being removed away from you, or you've lost the end of your tolerance because it is one-sided or out of balance, you will have to find your own resilience inside to realise that this is just a process, that it's temporary, but the more steps you take back towards yourself and persist in doing that and find the resilience to actually do that, the more that you will find where you can hear your inner voice and where you can hear the connection to your own self and your own needs. And it's a really good place to start. Take care of you. Have a great day.